I'm Stephen. I live in London and I'm 54 years of age.
Hi, I am Dr. Andre Harris. I'm 50 years old.
My name is Salvador Sanchez. I'm 54 years old, and I've been married for 10 years.
I think I was in my mid-40s and I went to look in a mirror and I saw a haggard old man looking back at me. The reaction afterwards was one of cataclysmic despair, depression, melancholy, thoughts of dying.
We had gotten to the point where it was arguments, and the vast majority of this was around sex. And I really wanted to put a lot of this on her and started to recognize the changes that I was going through, the weight that I had gained.
I've noticed that sexual performance has changed. I got the feeling that my wife felt that it was her fault. So I wanted to reassure my wife that no, it wasn't her. It was simply the fact that as you reach a certain age, the body doesn't respond as well as you would hope.
When this opportunity came about to look at having a little bit of a helping hand, I was obviously interested. It was just to create a more manly version of me, if you like. That involved strengthening my jawline and brought my cheekbones up a bit.
We've had slight discussions about whether or not I should go on, like say, Viagra or something along those lines. We haven't decided anything yet.
If you have energy and you're keeping your body in shape, that's going to affect you long term. And for myself, I'm definitely a believer because it's made a difference in our relationship and in our family and how I'm doing.
Wow. Joining me now, Stephen Taylor Brown, Salvador Sanchez, and Dr. Andre Harris. Thank you all for joining me. Stephen, I'll start with you. So you described the haggard old man that you looked in the mirror and saw at the time. You look fantastic now. How do you feel? Any regrets, any look backs on having the procedures done?
None whatsoever. I think it's probably worth noting that these are what are called non-surgical treatments. So that means they are, one, reversible, and two, they are short-term.
Well, does that mean you wouldn't do any surgical? I mean, non-surgical, obviously fillers, but if you looked in the mirror, like, I don't know, if we talk about this as women, you know, if you looked in the mirror 10 years from now, are you opposed to an actual surgical procedure?
I wouldn't say I'm either for it or against it. I think it's down to where you are at any one moment in your life. And my view is, you know, whatever you feel comfortable with it, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, that's fine, as long as it's your decision and you're doing it for the right reasons. For me, I don't think I would be ready for that now, but in 10 years, who knows?
Well, I like your openness because, again, you know, women, we're always asked about it, but you rarely hear men talk about it. Salvador, another thing we rarely talk about openly is sexual performance. I loved in your video diary that you said you and your wife still haven't decided yet. Is it a decision that you would have together on what? If it's Viagra, if, you know, I'm up at night, I see all those low T commercials, which is something I didn't really know until midnight hours. These commercials pop up and you Google it. Did you know?
Well, actually, no, I didn't know. I actually probably still don't know what my low T count would be or should be. Yeah. But we know we haven't had that discussion. Indeed, it's something that obviously we should both have. It doesn't obviously affect me. It's also with her as
well. Are you avoiding the conversation? I mean, here you are on national TV. You've told us. Are you avoiding the solution to the problem that I mean, listen, we're talking about millions of people here. It's not just you. Why not a conclusion?
No, I wouldn't say we avoided the question. Actually, coming on the show, we had to have a frank discussion of what I'm going to be discussing to, you know, hundreds or millions of viewers. I think the instances where this happened have not been as often where it's warranted a discussion. But, you know, honestly, I'm older. It's most likely going to happen again. You know, I might be willing, but my body would be saying, you go on ahead. I'm going to stay here and have a pizza. But like anything else, it's always best to speak before anything happens to make sure that we're both happy. We're both on the same page.
Andre, you know, you hit a nerve when you were talking about the relationship with your wife. Part of the reason we wanted to do this story is that we were hearing from significant others, partners, and spouses of men going through midlife crisis. How did you talk about it with her?
You know, I shouldn't even say we talked about it. We argued about it when it came to that kind of intimacy and having problems with being able to deal with sex issues in the relationship. It was a huge fight on a regular basis.
What sex issue were you having?
We weren't having it. We weren't having it. So when you look at what I consider to be a young couple, and the fact that we were, it was like going into the desert at times. You lost that connection and that intimacy that could be there. And it was a struggle for her because she didn't have that desire. And it was a struggle for me because we weren't being intimate anymore.
What part of this, though, was your midlife crisis? What was it about you that was putting it in crisis?
When I started, you know, I did find out from, you know, as a physician, I did find out what my testosterone level was, because she had gone through treatment. She was doing miraculously. And so I said, well, let me see where I'm at. And my testosterone at the time was like 316, and I was 40 years old or something 43 years old. And so after treatment and getting my testosterone up to a better level, I started working on my body. I started working on weight loss, and those things really made a transformation as far as how I looked. And you can imagine, you know, of course, every woman wants to find their husband desirable.
Right, because we often put the pressure on the woman to look hot, and then the man is given a reprieve or a pass to have those moments.
Looking sloppy.
Those are your words. Salvador, what advice do you have for couples, I mean, who are trying to approach that sensitive conversation of sexual performance in the midlife? What helped with you and your wife?
Well, first of all, any advice I could give was just honesty. This is your partner. This is somebody who you're sharing your life with. You can't go through life without that partner, and honesty is the basis for anything you do. My wife is an incredible woman, and she deserves that. I'm very fortunate to have to find love a second time. And so when I feel that, I should say when this happened, I didn't want her to feel that it was her. I mean, that pains me. That pains me to think that she feels that she's the one that's not attractive when it's something your body is doing. You may not want it to happen, right, but it's going to happen. And so, again, we haven't had a definitive discussion on what we're going to do, but we are talking about it.
I love that. We'll get you to stick around. I'm going to ask the panel to stay with us. We're going to add a doctor into this because there are medical questions and advice. And I do have a few more for Stephen as well with his non-invasive procedures. As we said, men don't talk about their physicality in the way that we do. Our panel is sticking around. We got a doctor coming up as well right after the break. Welcome back. We're joined by cardiologist Dr. Dave Montgomery, who's here to unpack some of the things that we spoke with our panel of men and the men this hour. Dr. Dave, there are people who call this menopause, the midlife crisis. I remember when men's heart health was the biggest conversation that we would have about men in their 40s and beyond. How do you feel? Are we taking it more seriously, the bottom line now?
Yeah, well, so, I'll tell you that that menopause term is really not that helpful because it sort of hinges on the idea that the reason why men go through what they go through, Tamron, during this time of life, I'm in that time of life too, by the way, is because of testosterone reduction. And what you'll know is that many of the men who are going through this time have a normal cholesterol. It goes down after a certain point, but it's not because of testosterone. I think that men are not focused on any part of their health like these 5 men that you're talking about, and kudos to them, and thank you for exposing them or putting them on. I don't think we're doing a good job for men at all. So.
How do we do better then? You got Stephen on talking about, listen, I looked in the mirror, I didn't like what I see, I made some changes, voila. We as women talk about these things openly, but we know this impacts the entire family. Every man here has talked about it impacting their relationships down the line.
Yes, absolutely. 5 evolved men. This is a unique thing. Listen, I see this every day. And one of the ways that we're going to continue to do it is to normalize the conversation for men. You doing this right now is so huge. I know you know how huge it is, but this makes the conversation even better. There are a lot of men watching your show right now and are going to watch it on DVR and social media. The way that we get men to start talking about it, because we were taught as kids, don't talk about it. Get up, walk it off, right? Don't cry.
Yeah.
The unintended consequence of that, Tamron, is that we try to rely on ourselves, self-reliance, to fix things that go wrong. We don't talk about it with each other. We don't go to the doctors. And unfortunately, a lot of things go wrong when we don't do that.
We're almost out of time. What about the people in the man's life, bringing it up to them? How do you do that?
So that's a really touchy situation. Each man is different. I will tell you, just like Chris, when your kids start chiming in, that is one of the biggest motivators. My daughter herself, last year when the pandemic was coming, I was getting a little bit of weight. I'm a middle-aged guy too. And she said, Dad, what's going on right here? Guess what? The belly's gone, okay? So one of the ways is to do it in a very friendly and loving way for your men to hear.
I like that very much. And for those who don't have, significant others in the house, at the end of the day, you're looking at the man in the mirror. And you want to like the man in the mirror that you see. One of my favorite songs, by the way. Well, thank you all for joining us.